boy's back. What's up, chat? Happy fucking Friday, bitches. That's right. You found me. Not gonna move the mic again, I promise. I won't move the mic again. Also won't do that. Hello? Something ain't right. That's on. Is that better? No. No, remove. Okay. That should be good. My voice was a little weak. Can't have that. Can't have a weak voice. That's right. It's time for the fucking news. We do it different. We try to have fun. That's right, chat. That's right. That's right, chat. We have fun. Most of the time. Hey, new colors. Can't see them on screen, but got new colors. All right, chat. That's it. Here we go.
Trump said he would once again delay his ultimatum for Iran.
Here we go.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. and Israel are continuing to bomb Iran after President Trump said he would once again delay his ultimatum for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz or face renewed attacks on energy infrastructure. On Thursday, Trump said he'd extended his deadline 10 days until April 6th, previously set today as the deadline, and before that, March 23rd. Trump also said Iran has offered him, quote, eight big boats of oil as a goodwill gesture of goodwill. He later revised that number to 10. He made the claims despite Iran's repeated denials of any direct negotiations with the U.S.
And they'll tell you, we're not negotiating. We will not negotiate. Of course they're negotiating. They've been obliterated. Who wouldn't negotiate? They are begging to make a deal. We'll see if we can make the right deal.
Axios reports the Pentagon's developing military options for what it's calling a final blow against Iran that could include an invasion by ground forces. One plan would see the U.S. invade or blockade Kharg Island, Iran's main oil export terminal. Another plan would send U.S. forces deep inside the interior of Iran to secure the highly enriched uranium buried within nuclear facilities. Meanwhile, Wall Street on Thursday suffered its worst day since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Earlier today, the price of Brent crude oil topped $110 a barrel after Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, warning, quote, any passage through this strait will face a harsh response. In Israel, air raid sirens sounded across Tel Aviv and other cities overnight as Iran and Hezbollah fired waves of missiles, rockets, and drones. One man was killed, another seriously injured after a Hezbollah rocket fell in Israel's northernmost city of Nahariya. Israeli media report at least 25 people were wounded Thursday. Meanwhile, Iran's continuing attacks on U.S. military bases and oil and gas infrastructure across the Persian Gulf region. In Kuwait, Officials said Iranian missiles and drones had damaged infrastructure at 2 ports. Israel's military says it's expanding its invasion of southern Lebanon, sending more ground forces to set up a so-called buffer zone along Israel's northern border. The deployment of more Israeli troops came after Israel's finance minister and defense minister both suggested Israel should annex southern Lebanon. This comes as UNICEF warns Israeli attacks have killed at least 121 children in Lebanon, with more than 370,000 children displaced from their homes.
Wow.
On Capitol Hill, House Democratic leaders have chosen not to force a vote on an Iran war powers resolution this week, putting off any potential vote until Congress returns from a 2-week recess in mid-April. The delay has angered progressives. Demand Progress said in a statement, quote, "This is a moment for anti-war leadership, not hesitation. The House should be on the record now, especially when reporting suggests the votes are there to pass a war powers resolution," unquote. Journalist Ryan Grimm of DropSite News went further, writing that House Foreign Affairs Committee ranking member Gregory Meeks is delaying a vote precisely because it might pass. Grimm wrote, quote, "Dems secretly want this war to continue because it hurts Trump," unquote.
Oh.
Meanwhile, a bill introduced Thursday by Congressmember Meeks and Washington Democratic Representative Pramila Jayapal seeks to block President
Ryan
Trump
Grimm is kind of
from
right
using
sometimes.
any federal funds to take military action against Cuba without congressional authorization.
Oh, they better not.
Mexico's Navy says a search and rescue operation is underway after 2 ships carrying humanitarian aid to Cuba went missing in the Caribbean. The ship set sail March 20th, bound for Havana as part of the Nuestra America Flotilla, our America Flotilla, but failed to arrive as expected and have not been in communication. There are at least 9 crew members aboard 2 ships, including a 4-year-old child. They're from Cuba, France, Poland, and the United States. In Cuba, doctors report many patients are dying as a direct result of the U.S. oil blockade, which has led to rolling blackouts and severe shortages of food, medicine, and equipment. This is Fernando Trujillo, Cuba's National Director of Hospital Services.
Our country, which has managed to perform more than 1.2 million operations annually, has had to reduce in recent times to 700,000, which is still a significant number, due fundamentally to the blockade. Now, with all these limitations, we've had to prioritize and limit surgical activity, giving priority especially to serious cases and to what cannot be postponed.
Former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores appeared at a federal court here in Manhattan Thursday, nearly 3 months after they were abducted by the U.S. military in Caracas. They've pleaded not guilty to narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges. Maduro's lawyer asked the court to dismiss the case, arguing the Trump administration's violating his and his wife's constitutional right to counsel by blocking Venezuela from paying their legal fees.
What the fuck?
The Treasury Department has barred the funds, citing sanctions against Venezuela.
What?
Judge Alvin Hellerstein, who's presiding over the case, asked, quote, "What's the interest of the government now in blocking those funds? We're doing business in Venezuela. The defendant is here. Flores is here. They present no further national security threat," he said. Judge Hellerstein did not issue a ruling on Maduro's legal fees and has not set a trial date. The Senate voted overnight to fund most of the Department of Homeland Security after a partial shutdown left tens of thousands of federal workers without pay. The deal funds the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, the Coast Guard, FEMA, and Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, but leaves out ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Border Patrol. Senate negotiators failed to agree on ICE reforms demanded by Democrats after immigration agents killed Alex Preti and Renee Good in Minneapolis. More than 480 TSA officers quit during the shutdown, and absences reached as high as 40% at some airports. The bill now goes to the House for a vote.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Continue operating on $75 billion in separate funds already approved by Congress. A federal judge in San Francisco Thursday blocked the Trump administration from designating the artificial intelligence company Anthropic as a supply chain risk. U.S. District Judge Rita Lynn also blocked Trump's order that the government cut all contracts with Anthropic. The Pentagon blacklisted Anthropic last month after the company refused to allow its Claude tool to be used for autonomous weapons or the mass surveillance of Americans. District Court Judge Rita Lynn wrote, quote, "Nothing in the governing statute supports the Orwellian notion that an American company may be branded a potential adversary and saboteur of the U.S. for expressing disagreement with the government," unquote. Anthropic had signed a $200 million contract with the Pentagon back in July. The Financial Times is reporting oil futures contracts worth around $580 million were traded just minutes before President Trump's social media post about alleged peace talks with Iran earlier this week. Separately, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy wrote that $1.5 billion in S&P 500 futures were sold minutes before President Trump announced his 5-day pause on attacking Iran.
Minutes.
Senator Murphy wrote on X, quote, $1.5 billion. Let me say it again. A $1.5 billion bet, bigger than any futures purchases made at the time, 5 minutes before Trump's post. Who was it?
Excuse me?
Trump? A family member? A White House staffer? This is corruption, mind-blowing corruption, Senator Murphy wrote. CNN's reporting an unknown trader made $1 million from dozens of bets about Iran on the prediction market platform Polymarket. Meanwhile, House Republicans Wednesday blocked a Democratic motion to subpoena Donald Trump Jr. over his venture capital firm investing in a rare earth minerals company months before it received a $620 million loan from the Pentagon. In Russia, Ukrainian drones have struck ports and refineries along the Baltic Sea in the western Leningrad region, sending a huge column of smoke into the sky that was visible all the way in Finland. Reuters reports the attacks halted at least 40% of Russia's oil export capacity, the largest oil supply disruption in Russia's modern history.
Wow.
This comes as the Washington Post reports the Pentagon's considering a plan to redirect weapons originally meant for Ukraine to the Middle East, including air defense interceptor missiles. In Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky
He's like me.
said this week the White House is making U.S. security guarantees for Ukraine in any future peace deal contingent on Ukraine giving up its defense of the eastern Donbas region.
He's a short king.
In my view, the Russian side is shaping the atmosphere in its dialogue with the Americans around this very idea, that Ukraine should withdraw from Donbas. The United States will then provide the security guarantees Ukraine is seeking, and Russians will certainly end this war.
The International Olympic Committee announced Thursday it'll bar transgender women from competing in women's events. The ban will take place at the 2028 Los Angeles Games. The policy requires all female athletes to undergo a mandatory gender screening, which is a cheek swab or blood test to detect the presence of the SRY gene associated with sexual development typically seen in males. That's despite the fact that the scientist who discovered the SRY gene has publicly opposed using it to determine biological sex. The IOC's decision follows President Trump's executive order last year barring transgender women from competing on women's college sports teams. And here in New York, unionized professors at NYU have ended a strike after reaching a tentative contract with their university. Nearly 1,000 full-time faculty members launched the 2-day work stoppage, demanding higher wages, job stability, and relief from heavy workloads. If they ratify the 5-year deal, they'll receive an average raise of 20% this year. The contract also includes new guardrails for academic freedom and the use of artificial intelligence. 20% raise, huh? And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This is Democracy Now!, Democracy
You aren't getting a 20% raise on a normal job these days.
The U.S.-Israeli war in Iran has entered its 28th day.
3%.
Iranian officials say the war has killed nearly 2,000 people in Iran.
That's what they do.
Earlier today, Israel's defense minister said Israeli attacks on Iran will escalate and expand. Meanwhile, President Trump's extended his deadline for Iran to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump is now threatening to obliterate Iran's power plants on April 6th if the strait isn't reopened. Trump claimed talks with Iran are going well. This is Trump speaking during Thursday's cabinet meeting.
They now have a chance to make a deal, but that's up to them. And they'll tell you, we're not negotiating. We will not negotiate. Of course they're negotiating. They've been obliterated. Who wouldn't negotiate? They are begging to make a deal.
What?
We'll see if we can make the right deal. And if they make the right deal,
not what's happening.
Then the strait will open up. Hormuz Strait will open up.
Iran has repeatedly denied it's engaging in direct talks with the U.S. Earlier today, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said friendly countries have conveyed messages between the two countries, but no dialogue has occurred. On Thursday, supporters of the Iranian government rallied in Tehran.
Trump's whole approach is psychological warfare. He's only playing psychological and media games and making a mockery of himself in front of the world. Everyone knows that Trump is a bluffer and a major liar. That has been proven to everyone.
We're joined now by Jeremy Scahill. He's been closely following the war in Iran and the reports about negotiations. Jeremy is co-founder of Dropsite News. Hi, Jeremy. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, why don't you start off with the latest news that yesterday President Trump said at Iran's request, he's extending the deadline for bombing Iran's infrastructure by 10 days.
Well, Amy, within minutes of Trump posting that message on Truth Social, I spoke to a senior Iranian official who told me immediately that Trump is not being truthful and that Iran made no such request.
None.
And if it is the case that Trump is lying about this, it's part of a multi-week pattern that has extended basically throughout the duration of this war that the U.S. and Israel initiated on February 28th. What I'm told by Iranian officials is that on roughly the third day of the bombing, Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy, began sending WhatsApp messages and other messages through intermediaries to Iranian officials asking for talks about winding down the war. This is just in the initial first few days. And, you know, there's some indication that Trump believed that by assassinating Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and other senior Iranian officials, that somehow the Iranian government was going to
that's what someone told them
quickly. And it seems that they really underestimated both Iran's will to fight this war, but also its capacity to continue striking. Almost every day, you have War Secretary Pete Hegseth standing before the American people at the Pentagon and saying Iran's missile capacity has been degraded by 90%, its drone capacity degraded by 95%, and Iran continues to strike at U.S. military facilities across the Persian Gulf and is intensifying its attacks against Israel, while Hezbollah, which the world was also told was decimated by Israel a year ago, has continued to fire missiles and to inflict deaths and other casualties on Israeli occupation forces. So the U.S. is the party that has been consistently asking for talks. And early last week, I did a story, Amy, where I learned from Iranian officials that Steve Witkoff had been directly text messaging Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister. And when I went for comment to the White House, just to say, typically when I ask for comment from the White House, they respond by saying, we direct you to the last Truth Social post of Donald Trump or the comments he made on Air Force One. But this time, the White House went ballistic and accused Dropsite News of carrying water for Islamic terrorists, called us abhorrent, said that we're engaged in, quote, America Last behavior. And then they quickly leaked to Barak Ravid of Axios and some other journalists an alternative bizarro world version of this story where they said it's actually the Iranians that have been begging Steve Witkoff for talks. So then what happened is that a few days ago, the White House began saying that, when Trump himself said it, that there are direct talks happening between Iran and the White House. I spoke to Iranian officials. They said this is completely false, that once again, the U.S. is asking for talks and is sending messages through Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt. And so it's clear here that Donald Trump is not being truthful. You could say at some points he's just blatantly lying. But the question is why? It's possible, as the Iranians allege, that a large part of this is market manipulation. That people are making a lot of money off of these announcements, but also trying to calm oil markets. It's also possible that the United States is trying to float these ideas to sort of spy on or do surveillance on the Iranian chain of command to see who the actual deal makers are. It's also possible that given the fact that the United States has bombed Iran twice in the past year, while claiming to be in negotiations, that this entire thing is a front, a facade that is being presented, albeit in a clumsy Trump-esque way, because the U.S. is planning some sort of a larger escalation or operation against Iran.
And again, the whole issue of the deploying thousands of U.S. paratroopers to the Persian Gulf, the possibility of a land invasion of perhaps Karg Island?
You know, Amy, I've looked closely at these deployments, and, you know, I don't think that the United States has a large enough presence of troops and other weaponry to engage in a full-scale invasion of Iran imminently. There certainly are the types of forces that would be used, tier 1 operators, special operations forces, rapid expeditionary units of the Marines to engage in some sort of limited incursion or attempt to seize a part of territory, or perhaps even to do some kind of a special operations raid. I've heard from some sources that there are concepts of operations that have been worked up by the Pentagon to explore possibly a targeted operation at Iran's enriched uranium disks. And the purpose of such an operation, you could call it like a spectacular operation, something akin to an Osama bin Laden night raid, is because Trump has painted himself into a corner. He is undoubtedly in a quagmire. They completely underestimated Iran's military capacity. And so part of what may be happening is that the Pentagon is giving Trump options where he could sort of declare a fake victory by having something tangible to point to. There's also been a series of really bizarre, cryptic posts on the White House's Twitter feed over the past 24 hours or so with these pixelated images, and then a video that if you play it backwards says that, like, a surprise is coming. It's possible that the White House is contemplating some form of a raid or special operation that they believe would give Trump an ability to say, we've won our victory. The Iranians have repeatedly said, both publicly and to me also in private, that they would welcome an attempt by the United States to actually seize part of Iranian territory, because it would allow Iran to use shorter range weapon systems. It would almost certainly inflict deaths and casualties on American occupation forces. While it's possible that the U.S. may want to try to seize Karg Island, while they may want to do some massive military operation in the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, remains open. Despite the U.S. saying it's closed, it remains open. The Iranians are making arrangements with what they call friendly countries that want to pass ships through the Strait of Hormuz. If the U.S. does do something like that,
as long as you're not
it would, again, put them in range of close-range missiles of the Iranians, ground troops, and other weapons that are not available to the Iranians to strike at the U.S. with right now. But it could also be that the U.S. has been implying that it wants to do an operation in the Strait of Hormuz or Karg Island as a distraction because they have some other military operation planned.
Well, isn't that the present that President Trump is talking about? He said Iran has given him a present and it's worth a lot of money. It's allowing what? Tankers to go through.
He said that Iran offered him to allow Pakistani-flagged vessels. He said they wanted to give me 8 of them, but I said, it can be, they originally wanted to give me 10. I said, no, it's okay, you can give me 8. But when open source researchers started looking at the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, this is all publicly traceable. It doesn't seem like those tankers that Trump is referring to actually pass through at all. And in fact, the Iranians have said that they offered him no such gift whatsoever. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, who the U.S. has implied it's negotiating with, has been one of the most aggressive posters on X, kind of poking at the United States and posting memes about Donald Trump's claims and saying that all of this is total nonsense. So, you know, it's reminiscent in a way of some of the lies that were told during the so-called negotiation process related to Gaza.
I don't believe Trump.
But I think that we now have to recognize the very public record, which is that Donald Trump has made a mockery of the word of the United States when it comes to negotiations, because he's twice bombed Iran in the middle of negotiations. So they're using the veneer and, you know, previous, I guess, credibility of the United States in an effort to try to lure Iran into a position where they think that they have time because they're negotiating, and then launch a surprise attack. Iranian sources have told me consistently they're aware of this. They have not responded to U.S. Requests for direct talks, that they've essentially left a lot of Steve Witkoff's messages on two checks without them lighting blue, you know, on WhatsApp, because they know that this is the U.S. game plan.
What does Iran want?
You know, it's interesting. The Iranians said that this talk of a 15-point plan, you know, the White House is making it sound like Trump has sort of extended an olive branch. He's put on paper 15 points, and it's the Iranians that are rejecting it. Iran does acknowledge that the U.S. through intermediaries has sent position points, but they said that from different intermediaries, they've gotten different messages. So let's take it as a whole and say that roughly the 15 points that the U.S. claims are the conditions that Trump has set are in some way based in some form of reality that has been communicated to the Iranians. The Iranians are not responding and saying, oh, in point number 6, can we edit this? Or point number 10, if we could edit this. That was the process that the U.S. was supposedly engaged in February, when the U.S. decided not to bring a single technical expert on nuclear enrichment to the talks and just sent 2 businessmen, one of whom is the son-in-law of President Trump, and both of whom are deep in investments in the Middle East. And so what the Iranians did is they said, here's our conditions for ending the war. The Iranians do not seem like they're in a panic, despite what the White House says. In fact, the Iranians are saying they think that Trump is in deep, deep trouble with his Gulf allies, who are in utter panic about what Iran has been able to do to their economies, how easily Iran is able to strike, that Trump is causing political problems for his own party in the United States with the midterm elections coming up. And so what they've said is, any end of the war can't just be a ceasefire. We're not going to repeat June 2025 again, when the Israelis and the Americans asked for an unconditional ceasefire to end the June attacks that were launched against Iran. They say that they'll only accept the comprehensive settlement on the war that would include not only Iran, but also the other fronts of resistance, meaning Lebanon, Iraq, and more recently, they've added Palestine. They haven't gone into detail about what that means, but that's their first term. The second term is that they're saying that they want compensation paid by the United States for the damage done by the United States and Israel. That could come in the form of direct payments or the unfreezing of Iranian funds. They also want long-term guarantees that there isn't going to be a resumption of the war, and they want it certified by the United Nations Security Council and guaranteed publicly by both Russia and China. And then on the issue of nuclear enrichment, the Iranians are not so much publicly messaging this because they have to do their own domestic messaging to their public. But what I understand is that they are willing to make agreements about enrichment that would solely be dedicated to medical purposes or non-military purposes. But interestingly, a senior Iranian official told me that as much as the U.S. focuses on its ballistic missile program, that after any deal is made, Iran is going to continue and, in fact, advance its ballistic missile program because they say that that is proven to be the only deterrent that Iran actually has on a military level against the U.S. and Israel. So Iran's position, and they said this publicly from the beginning, Trump says, oh, no one knew that they were going to attack the Gulf. They said it to me, they said it publicly, they said it to other journalists, that this is exactly what they were going to do. And so Iran, the sense that I get from Iranian officials is that they want to cause enough pain to the world economy because of its ties to the Gulf countries and because of the United States' dominance in the world, that any nation that thinks of attacking Iran again is going to do so knowing that these are the consequences. Now, Iran could also be engaging, and I'm sure this is true, in its own form of kind of maximalist demands. They've said, we want the U.S. to withdraw all of its military bases from the region. Now, they've damaged an enormous quantity of them. The New York Times even acknowledged it this week. They've had to move their soldiers into hotels. And by the way, the United States, you can make an argument, the U.S. is putting its soldiers in Gulf countries' hotels and effectively using those civilian objects as human shields, which is exactly what the Israelis claim Hamas, although it was false about Hamas and other Palestinian resistance groups were doing in hospitals and elsewhere. So I think at the end of the day, the Iranians are going to be flexible when it does come to negotiations on certain issues, but I don't think that the U.S. is going to get the terms it could have gotten in February when Trump could have declared victory and said, I did what Barack Hussein Obama never could have done. He had terms in that deal that went far beyond the 2015 JCPOA, and instead they used it as a veneer of negotiation to then launch a surprise attack against Iran.
Jeremy, what's the point of President Trump saying this on Fox News, being questioned by Jesse Waters?
You kind of suggested that we'd knocked out Ayatollah Jr. Have we? And did the CIA tell you that Ayatollah Jr. is gay?
Well, they did say that, but I don't know if it was only them. I think a lot of people are saying that, which puts them off to a bad start in that particular country, you know?
Your response, Jeremy?
This is part of a long pattern of the U.S. and Israel claiming, oh, we found pornography at this person that we've declared the next Hitler's headquarters, or question, sort of implying the immorality of various enemies of the United States. I mean, this is a classic U.S. propaganda campaign that is just sort of a naked attempt to try to further dehumanize the Iranian side, or to try to raise some issues that have nothing to do with the fact that the U.S. and Israel are waging a war of aggression. This is part of U.S. psychological operations for many, many decades.
And the latest news as we wrap up, that oil futures contracts worth around $580 million were traded minutes before Trump's social media post about alleged peace talks.
I mean, this is remarkable. This has happened throughout Trump's presidency, both going back to the Gaza war and the Iran war. It's very, very clear that this is White House Incorporated, that Trump is not just representing the American people or the American government. It's the most naked form of corruption that we've ever seen in the White House. Always corruption is part of the United States. We have legalized bribery in our election system because of the role of corporations. But Donald Trump is the extra version of the most heinous aspects of American imperial history and corruption.
Jeremy Scahill, co-founder of Dropsite News, will link.
There's that, folks. I know, it's crazy.
Inzamam, what kind of responses are you tracking since President Trump announced another pause on his threats to strike Iran's power plants?
Well, Anna, this deadline was looming, but I think this delay was expected because bombing power plants right now in Iran would be a major escalation in this conflict. It would have huge impact to the millions of people inside Iran. It would essentially cripple them. But what it does do is gives us a bigger window for diplomacy, 10 extra days, in fact. Diplomacy which isn't entirely going as planned. Trump had said that Iran asked specifically for this delay, that they said they wanted 7 days. President Trump turned around and said, well, you can have 10. Iran saying that that simply isn't the case whatsoever. And they down on, in fact, keeping the Strait of Hormuz shut, not allowing 3 vessels through today, asking them to turn away.
You turn away, mate. We're going to shoot you down.
Are going well. These talks for negotiations, Iran completely rejecting that once again. But it is, Anna, the Strait of Hormuz where Iran has the upper hand of this conflict. They essentially still have control of this waterway, and effectively it's having a huge impact on the global economy. We know 20% of the world's oil usually passes through there. Not a drop of that is passing through to allow many oils around the country, many countries around the world to get their oil. In fact, many countries are suffering as a result. But look, Anna, we're in a month now into this conflict, and despite all of the discussions, the talks, the negotiations over the last few days, the fighting very much continues. As you mentioned there, Israel continues to target Iran, as they did do overnight and throughout the day today, specifically targeting the heart of Tehran. We were told of around 15 minutes of consistent bombing last night near to the Pakistan embassy, as well. As we know, Pakistan trying to play this mediator role in all of this. And then in retaliation, Iran has continued its strike into the Gulf nations today. The UAE, where I am, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, all being targeted by Iranian drones and missiles. Kuwait, there was a port there, the largest port in the country, which was struck by a couple of Iranian drones. So look, I think it's really hard to just understand how any sort of peace is expected in this region when you've got attacks still going on and you've got diplomacy talks which aren't really going all that well.
Good point.
Well, and it's hard to know how those talks are really going. Chris, here's more of what the president said about this extended pause in an interview with Fox last night.
And so I gave them a 10-day period. They asked for 7. You're going to say, oh, Trump's a terrible negotiator. They asked for 7, and I said, I'm going to give you 10 because they gave me ships. We talked about the 8 ships, the president that I talked about the other day. But they asked for 7, and I gave them 10. You got 10 days, and they were very thankful about that.
Bullshit.
Chris, Iran says
what
it
fairy
didn't
tale
ask
is he
for
living
this
in?
pause and has denied any substantive talks are actually taking place. Can either side be trusted as being truthful at this point? Read the tea leaves for us. What's really going on here?
No, is the answer to that question. On one side, you have Donald Trump and somebody like Pete Hegseth, who both of them, neither of them have any sort of credibility at all. They lie all the time. They misdirect people. There's no way that the American people can trust the word that's coming out of their mouths. On the other side, you have the Iranians, who we also can't trust and who have little reason to come to the negotiating table with the United States right now, as the president sends mixed signals when it comes to ending the war. Even as he says the U.S. is prioritizing diplomacy, he's directing thousands of troops into the region, amplifying an expectation that the conflict could be growing, not coming to a close. So, you hear from diplomats around the world that they have no idea what the United States is trying to do here. So why would the Iranians sit down at the negotiating table with us at this point?
Barbara, Chris just referred to this Wall Street Journal reporting that the Pentagon is considering sending 10,000 more ground troops to the Middle East, citing Defense Department officials with knowledge of the planning. If discussions are going so well that the president's extending this pause,
it's a lot.
Why weigh sending more troops?
They should not do that.
Well, I think this is the big question right now, literally around the world on what is the U.S. planning here? I think there's 2 possibilities that are pretty obvious, which is either, they're talking about sending these additional troops to try and keep the Iranians off kilter, to make the Iranians think there will be some massive U.S. military intervention on the ground, so they better come to the negotiating table now. But will that be the case? That's the other side of the coin. Sending 10,000 troops, I'm not exactly clear from the administration what that is going to get them, whether they would be able to take territory, hold territory, and keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Because remember, if you're going to put troops on the ground in combat, you also have to have a substantial number of support troops, if you will. The people that maintain the vehicles, that provide food, fuel, medical care, spare parts, all of those things that go into having forces on the ground. It's not just the, so-called trigger pullers. It's a massive operation, and it takes a lot of sustainment and a lot of careful planning. This is not, if it happens, this is not going to be the kind of thing where the president can wake up one morning and say, I want to see it all done by this afternoon and have them all there. This would have to be very carefully done.
Yeah, Inzamam, a senior person at the White House, tells our Joe Scarborough that the feeling in the Trump administration is that the military operation just needs a couple more weeks, saying there are still targets that they want to hit, and they don't believe Iran can indefinitely hold the strait. So they're trying to kind of bide the time, it sounds like. Based on your reporting, is that an accurate read of where things stand?
Well, Anna, look, whilst on one hand, you've got all these talks and these negotiations supposedly going on in the background, as Barbara was just talking about there, you've got up to 10,000 troops heading to the region,
He's
but
literally
specifically
right
what
next
types
door.
of troops they are. The 82nd Airborne Fleet, which is arriving. These are the guys who flew into Afghanistan when they wanted to evacuate out of there. They're also the guys that were flown into Ukraine when the war in Ukraine started in the first few days as well. Essentially, these are people who arrive into enemy territory and can attack. You've also got the USS Tripoli on the way.
Okay.
This is an amphibious ship that will essentially go underwater if it needs to. It's got many Marines on board with it as well. And analysts have been telling me over the last couple of days, Anna, that these delays from Donald Trump, once again today, another 10-day delay, could well be because the US and Israel may be trying for some form of ground invasion, some form of extensive attack, which could see a huge impact on Iranian military and Iranian resources. So I think there is still a big question. On one hand, you've got potential conversations going on. On the other hand, we could see a major escalation in this conflict if these troops that are heading to this region could be used for some sort of attack on different territories inside Iran.
And Barbara, this person at the White House also told Joe Scarborough that the feeling inside the White House when it comes to these negotiations is that if you actually blow up their energy infrastructure, then there's really very little to negotiate with. What do you make of this assessment of the state of the war?
Well, you know, if they want to do a major blow to the Iranian regime, that would be it. But as we're discussing, destroying civilian infrastructure could be classified as a war crime potentially, depending. And two, it will upend truly world economy, world energy markets. Is that something the president wants to do? And how long would this impact last? It could be catastrophic for years. And we're already seeing the Gulf states reel from the destruction of their infrastructure. As we noted, there's a big strike in Kuwait earlier today on a port by the Iranians. It's hard to see how all of this would come back anytime soon. So I think the problem for Mr. Trump is to decide just how far in reality he really wants to go and what his intelligence community and national security advisors are telling him. And of course, is he listening to them?
Our colleague Jake Traylor has some new reporting on divides in the White House over this war. A senior White House official granted anonymity to speak candidly about the administration's thinking told Jake that Trump is calling the war already won is mostly hyperbole and said it's part of Trump just wanting to declare victory and move on. That official went on to say, quote, not that he regrets it or something, he's just bored and he wants to move on. Chris, what's your reaction to that?
That sounds like the same Donald Trump that we've seen over and over and over, who treats situations like this as a game to be enamored with and quickly get bored with. But unfortunately, we've seen this movie before. Presidents promise quick, decisive action, and instead the United States gets pulled into drawn-out conflicts that cost billions of dollars and puts American troops' lives at risk. The American people still have not been told what success looks like or how this ends. Donald Trump wants to just, snap his fingers and be done with it because he's bored, when we're very deeply engulfed in a very serious situation in the Middle East that could spin out of control if it's not dealt with in the correct way. And there's no way to have confidence in Donald Trump or the people advising him that that's going to be done.
God damn, chat. That's crazy.
Is it a deal, or do we make him squeal? President Trump sending Iran a 15-point plan to end the war as he readies 2,000 troops to head to the Middle East. Iran is reportedly suspicious of 47's deal, but they have a counteroffer, calling for war reparations and sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Here's Carolyn.
President Trump does not bluff, and he is prepared to unleash hell. Iran should not miscalculate again. Their last miscalculation cost them their senior leadership, their Navy, their Air Force, and their air defense system. Any violence beyond this point will be because the Iranian regime refused to understand they have already been defeated and refused to come to a deal.
Meanwhile, it turns out that Trump likes watching terrorists get blown to bits as much as we do. A new report claims the president gets a daily highlight reel of the military's biggest strikes in Iran, conveniently called Stuff Blowing Up. That is the best title for a Fox Nation show, right?
I love Stuff blowing up.
Stuff blowing up, and it's just nonstop things just blowing up. Much like my career, Dana. When we first
after
started
this segment.
Yeah, you know, so you have war reparations versus unleashing hell. That seems kind of like a push.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know what's going on, and I think that's how the commander-in-chief wants it, to be honest. I think that objectively, the military operations from our end are going very well.
Right.
And I would recommend several pieces of reading for you. But Brett Stevens in the New York Times saying that future generations will look back on this and go, I cannot believe they were able to accomplish all of these things.
Bullshit.
So militarily, yes. And then you have this question on the diplomacy. One of the difficult things is, who are we talking to? But I understand from the Iranian standpoint, do you want to raise your hand and say, I'm the guy?
Yeah.
Risk one, internal dissension against you.
Yeah, I do.
Or even possibly getting blown up yourself. So I don't know
sounds good
what
to
is
me.
happening. I think the madman theory is actually working in President Trump's
This
favor
is the
right now.
madman
He calmed
theory.
the markets on Monday. They've been
She's like, yeah, he's a
fairly steady
madman
right now, but there
That's what he
is a
does.
clock when it comes to
He's known as
Strait
the
of
worst
Hormuz.
madman ever.
Getting that open is of utmost
It's
importance.
funny how the planet just has one, like, it's the Strait of Hormuz. You think we'd think of a backup plan, Jesse. It's funny that he gets
Oh
the
my
dailies
God,
on the
you're
war. I can't figure
stupid.
out if he's like a movie director looking at the
He's so
dailies
dumb.
of the shoot, or he's in charge of controlled demolition for a contracting company.
It's war porn.
Yeah.
Turns me on too. The first peace talks, I think both sides are posturing. I wouldn't put any stock in either offer. These guys are too afraid to put their head above ground. They're not even talking to each other, let alone the United States. Everybody knows the straits to play. The 82nd Airborne's almost there. The Marines and the Rangers and Delta should be there by Friday. And we've been softening up the coastline. We hit 90 targets on Karg Island. I think everybody knows what's going to happen this weekend. I spoke to one of my best sources on Wall Street, and he said oil traders are seeing this now as ending in May. He says the International Naval Alliance should arrive by next week, maybe a week and a half. And he said the regime's just pretending to have leverage. They have absolutely no leverage, despite what you hear in the press. This has been completely and overwhelmingly one-sided. And this whole strait closure is Iran's last gasp. And he sees oil prices going down to 70 by the fall. Oil prices under Barack Obama closed under over $100 a barrel for around 3.5 years. Under Joe Biden, closed over 100 for 5 months. You know how many days it's closed over 100 under Donald Trump? 6. So everybody just needs to chill here, okay?
Oh.
Great article that you mentioned, Dana. I brought it and highlighted it for Jessica. Operation Desert Storm, widely considered a lightning-fast military success. I think
He's reading a
42
paper.
aircraft got shot down. In this operation, 0 by enemy fire. The land and air campaign lasted 6 weeks. Everybody remembers how fast that was? We're now in week 3 here. The invasion of Panama, 23 soldiers killed. Now we have 13 American dead. We actually had more people died in training exercises last year in the Army than have died in combat here.
Well, too bad.
We
they
went into
haven't
recession
really told
during
you how
that
many
Persian
people have died
crisis.
yet.
Now, since
They're lying.
Operation Midnight Fury, the Dow's up 9%. In the 2003 strike, there was a quick decapitation strike against Saddam. We missed him. Actually, first 40 seconds of the war, 40 dead. So I would recommend everybody read the New York Times. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the writing's on the wall.
You know, Emily, it is funny. Like, I think that America is suffering from the fact that maybe we just killed so many of their leaders. They've run out of people to talk to. And Jesse makes a point, like, no one wants to speak up. It's kind of like outnumbered. No one wants to talk to each other.
Because I'm hogging all the oxygen. First of all, stuff getting blown up is totally my weapons of war show, you guys, on Fox Nation.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Anyway, I agree. I mean, clearly there's not a lot of hands being raised in order to essentially, like, in the line
great,
to the execution guillotine. But I think what's interesting is as sort of the naysayers and as always the libs talking about the gap of alignment here, I think it's narrower than people think. And I think it's real, but it's not decisive. And from what I understand, diplomacy at this level, it's not about aligning endpoints. It's about sort of rationing your concessions. And the most important line in that was about the cost of war, essentially, like whether each side, when they decide what is the point at which the cost becomes too high to bear. We can keep going all day and all night, right?
No, we
That's our
can't.
biggest leveraging tool, that our commander-in-chief is flexible and that we have the military all day, all night. We can keep this up. We will keep killing everyone if they keep threatening our U.S. interests and our soldiers. And I think the whole point about that 15-point plan is that it's deferring the hardest issues, and it's creating political wins on both sides. This is not about, obviously,
we will not be sending our kids
the Islamic
to die
Republic
for Israel.
in any way.
No.
But it's about getting them, if they want, to save a little bit of face, while for us saying, yeah, we're getting everything that we need, everything that we want. You are checking all of those boxes. And if you want to say, sure, the United States answered some of our concessions, feel free. But we are, no matter what, protecting American interests. And I think we are well on our way to doing so. And as Caroline keeps saying, we're doing it expeditiously, way sooner than anyone predicted and way sooner than the White House predicted.
I'd love for them to save face, but they'll just cover it. Jessica, what do you make of do you have any, are your sources telling you who's running Iran?
No. And my Wall Street sources aren't saying the same thing that Jesse's Wall Street sources are saying either. But I love that you read a newspaper.
I read more than you every day.
I don't know if that's true.
Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, New York Post.
And you still say this crap on TV after you've read all that?
I can't believe she just said that.
Okay. The Daily, War snuff film briefing, there was more to that story than he likes to see what's getting blown up. There was concern that he was not taking in all of the dimensions of this war. And some of that you might think is unfair criticism. I know you like to put it on the libs and that it's just us and Orange Man bad. And no matter what he was going to do, we were going to hate it.
True.
But the Roger Wicker and Mike Rogers, both Republicans, the chairs of the Homeland Security committees in the Senate and the House, just came out of their briefing and they said, we need to know more about what's going on, what the options are, and why they're being considered. The White House continues to not make a strong enough case to the people who they need to go out there and sell this thing to the American public and then to the American public themselves. And that's why support for this, and I should note again that this is the least popular military incursion, not excursion, an incursion in modern American history. So take that Desert Storm. The approval for this incursion is down in CBS, Reuters, and Quinnipiac. And
Quinnipiac.
Ha ha ha. This is the thing. It's so funny. You try to deflect.
I mean, but what are the polls going to... War isn't popular.
That's not true. War used to be popular.
Well, thank God we changed. Maybe we've changed.
All right. My newspaper joke was funny.
Oh, tell me the newspaper joke.
I did it. I made it out loud.
It was good.
On the television.
It was good.
It's okay.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full.
So the Pentagon reportedly weighing in sending more than 10,000 additional troops to the Middle East as President Trump extends his pause on striking Iranian energy plants by 10 days. Retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute of the Study of War, General Jack Keane joins us now. General, we're 28 days in. How many more weeks do you think we need to finish the job, and what does finishing the job look like?
Yeah, certainly. Well, we got a little less than 3 more weeks in the minds of our commanders to complete this operation. Given it's taken a little over 3 weeks to get where we are, you can ascertain then that we have a lot of work still in front of us. And what does that really mean? Well, for a fact, we're going to accomplish all of the assigned objectives that President Trump has given the CENTCOM commander. And in talking to the IDF, they fully intend to accomplish all the objectives that Prime Minister Netanyahu has given to them. And the general time frame is as described, around 3 weeks. If it happens sooner, fine. If it have to take a little longer, we've said from the beginning that this is conditions-based. The enemy has a vote. And what is the enemy trying to do right now? Number one, they're trying to personally survive and keep the regime somewhat intact. And believe me, that is an enormous problem that they have. And you can see that. You're reporting on it every single day here in what is happening to the leadership. And the paranoia that exists inside of that leadership is real. And the chaotic decision-making process in there is real. So we're fragmenting that leadership for sure, and we have weeks to go to do more of that. The second thing they're doing, in addition to trying to survive individually and as a regime, they're trying to protect their assets. They know we know where everything is.
No, they don't.
We're systematically taking them down. Well, they want to save something for sure. So they have the ability to retaliate against what? When we begin to open up the Straits of Hormuz, if we're going to take Carg Island, they're going to want to do some kind of military retaliation against likely allies and partners in the region and U.S. bases would be the easiest targets. Israel, a more challenging target, to be sure. And they're trying to hide that, deceive that as much as possible, protect some of those resources, while at the same time still trying to fire missiles and drones at our bases and at Israel. So that makes those targets identification.
Yeah. Meantime, their drones are down 90%.
Are we going to be able to do that? You betcha. But it takes more time, it takes more identification, more tracking to do that. I try to describe it in a football analogy. You know, we're in the red zone here. We're on the 20-yard line. We're trying to get to the goal line, and the opposition is putting as much impediments in because they can see how close we are to attaining our objectives, and they're doing everything they can to prevent that from happening.
We're not at the 20-yard line. You're fucking dork.
We have the wherewithal to get this done for sure. And major events in front of us is take down as many missiles as we can, all the drones and nuclear enrichment, all of those targets still there, not all completed yet. And obviously, we fully intend to open up the Straits of Hormuz and keep that open. And that means it's not just about escorting ships, it's about securing it to make certain it's protected. And that it's an acceptable risk to begin to move ships through the Straits. And Iran's not going to sit on their hands while we attempt to do something like that. They're going to come after us, and we got to make certain we stop them.
And General, I guess they're charging $2 million if you want to move your tanker through there, so the extortion's got to stop. I understand, too, what the Iranians are saying is, and the Houthis are confirming, they say they're ready to get into the act and essentially try to shut down the Red Sea if they say if the Iranians ask them to. What will we do if the Houthis get in? And why don't you think they're in yet?
Well, I think the reason why Hezbollah isn't full in, they're only largely attacking mostly in the north, and they have capability to range all of Israel's major cities. And the Houthis, it's self-protection. And listen, they're not sure Iran's going to survive. So why should they hang themselves out and lose all of their resources and their capability to impose their will in the area that they're most concerned about, right there in Yemen? Why do that if they don't think this regime is going to survive? And believe me, that has got to be a question mark for all of those proxies out there. And how much risk are they willing to take on, given the shaky situation the Iranian regime is in? That's got to be a part of the decision-making process they're going through.
I understand, according to reports, we had the coordinates, or the Israelis had the coordinates on the Speaker of the House and the Foreign Minister. And we're asked by the Pakistanis, don't kill them. We're dealing with them. Those are the two people we can talk to. So the U.S. told the Israelis to back off. Would that be a good move if that indeed happened the way I said it?
Well, I don't know anything about that, nor do I pursue inquiries like that. It's plausible something like that would happen to keep the lines of communication open for negotiations. Listen, anybody close to this knows who the Iranians are. None of us think that these negotiations will materialize. And the reason is simple for our audience to understand. We're asking Iran to give up, to surrender everything that we're willing to take away from them, everything. And if they don't do that, no deal. And that's the reality of what we're facing.
Surrender everything we're willing to take away from them. What the fuck does that even mean?
Given this 47-year history of the regime, their tendency is not to surrender all of that, to dig their heels in and try to survive.
Right.
That's more likely the path we're on. I actually prefer the military option anyway, because the military option continues to destroy that leadership, continues to break them down, continues to make them much more vulnerable to collapse after. It enables us to take Carg Island, which is 90% of their fuel distribution. That would cause economic collapse. And it gives us huge leverage in holding the regime accountable then for what? Don't go out and kill any of your population. If you do that, this is what we intend to do to you. It gives us huge leverage.
What the fuck?
That negotiations would not provide us.
General, you had a huge day. You got up early for us. We truly appreciate you keeping your Friday appointment. General Jack Keane, thanks so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on
Boomer is
YouTube
such
and
a
catch
loser.
full shows streaming now.
Now let's check in with
Fox
some boomers that aren't losers.
Building a political brand in the party and the constituency. Like, I was on the left hook with Wajahat Ali yesterday, and we were talking about
Abiday.com. Well, you can get all sorts of tinctures that help you sleep, tinctures that help you relax, tinctures that gets it from gosh knows where, indulge. And right now they got BOGO. This is the 5-time award general launches an investigation into contracts handled by happy to subsidize a couple of pina coladas by the pool.
and by subsidize, you mean what exactly?
Pay you wages.
Pay me wages.
Well, pay part of the pina colada. I mean, out there they get pretty expensive, so you don't want to get too carried away.
Which is why you didn't pay for any of it.
Never asked.
Right. So stop bitching.
Things have gotten a little bit testy out there. It sounds like somebody might have gotten an offer from Crooked Media. Anyway.
Whoa!
It is really like when Don Draper went out to L.A.
Yeah, totally. Doesn't come back. Doesn't come back.
She was wearing sunglasses until right when I brought her on.
Didn't pick up on that chill vibe out there, I guess, though.
Well, we're all back in New York, as it were. We have a guest in studio today, and he'll be coming shortly. Overnight, the Senate passed a deal to essentially fund DHS without ICE or Customs Border Patrol. The Democrats didn't get much by way of reforms to ICE, although I think in this bill there is body cams for ICE. To the extent that that means anything, I don't know why it would. We have seen them, they're videotaped almost now constantly. They will be able to continue to wear their masks, although they don't seem to be wearing them as much at the airports, but I think they're going to start more these days. They will probably go without funding and have to rely on the huge slush fund that they got last year in the budget bill that Chuck Schumer essentially and Kristen Gillibrand made it possible to pass. I don't know how else to articulate that. We've seen that they have the ability to force a government shutdown. We have seen that the Republicans get blamed for it because they control the government. And I think what happened last night was a function of two things. One, Trump saying that he was going to unilaterally fund the TSA, which would have set it would have been illegal, but it also would have set a precedent. But I think what also was happening was Republicans and Democrats, both in the Senate and the House, are on recess for 2 weeks. They're all flying home. And airlines like Delta said that we're no longer letting you skip security. You got to go through actual security. And I think, honestly, they were afraid of dealing with their constituents at the airports.
I saw Senator Blackburn was filmed this morning and kind of getting jeered at for she's looking to go on vacation, or at least maybe she was flying into Washington. I'm not sure, but Yeah, like Trump's theory is that the Democrats are getting blamed for this. I do not agree.
No,
I do not agree.
I think it's clear. And so they've passed this. They're still going to get some grief because the House is supposedly going to pass it today if there's enough people around. Because many people suspect the House may have taken off. I mean, this is something that passed last night at 2 a.m. with unanimous consent. So we will keep you updated on that. In the meantime, let's do this
These
coverage.
people are not working for us. They're working
The Pentagon has
part-time.
said that they're getting ready 10,000 troops to head to the Middle East. Trump has said that they're extending the deadline for talks by 10 days. He's claiming the Iranians requested it. The Iranians did not, according to mediators.
Correct.
And so I don't know. We'll talk more about this with Hassan, but we're probably, I don't know, 50% chance a limited ground invasion to a place like Kharg Island today. We'll find, I should say over the weekend. We'll see. If
Also,
not,
when the markets are closed, by the way.
Yep. I mean, that's generally when he does it.
When he talks tough, too.
Yep. And we'll see. It could also be, these 10,000 troops that may or may not be coming to the Middle East, may be there as a stopgap. I mean, they are in, this is how a quagmire begins. And in fact, in many respects, they're in a quagmire. By all reporting, Trump wants to end this war, but he now knows the Iranians have made demands for a truce, which involve essentially payments in the same way that Egypt gets for the Suez Canal, that Iran would get for the Straits of Hormuz. They have asked
sanctions relief. It's like maximalist demands. They know they have the leverage. Exactly.
And now there is talk, as you know, like one of the other ways that some of the oil is getting out of the Middle East is through the Red Sea. And there is now talk that Iran, through its proxies, the Houthis, may end up trying to shut the Bab el Mandeb Strait, which is a Red Sea choke point, where some of the ships are getting out by basically sending the oil the other side from the Persian Gulf. So we'll see. But here is Donald Trump. He sort of does and doesn't care about a deal with Iran.
Right.
I'm the opposite of desperate. I don't care. I want to know. In fact, we have other targets we want to hit before we leave. We're hitting them on a daily basis. No, I don't talk about you. I can't talk about specifics. A lot of people say that wouldn't matter. Maybe it does matter. Who knows? But I wouldn't talk. It's like the question this young lady asked. Sorry about I embarrassed her. I don't want to embarrass you because I think I think she's a friendly reporter, so I'm sorry. But I can't say what we're going to do because if I did, I wouldn't be sitting here for long. They'd probably, what is it called, the 25th Amendment?
Has he been hearing about that a lot behind the scenes?
That's the first time I've ever heard of
Never heard of the 25th
Amendment.
Amendment.
By the way, in this press conference, when I think being asked about Iran, he went into some long diatribe about Sharpies. Feels like it's kind of relevant.
$1,000 Sharpies.
The whole 25th Amendment thing.
Yeah, well, let's maybe get that for when Hassan is here. But it seems like what Trump is doing is, I think he is actually doing the madman theory, right?
Okay.
Which is something they talked about, Kissinger and Nixon talked about as a way of like making what he's doing so unpredictable that foes get nervous. I will say, I don't think anybody thinks that the Americans won in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So the madman theory only goes so far.
Exactly.
I do think that Trump successfully faked the Iranians out by negotiating with them on multiple occasions and then bombing them to make them
they learned their lesson.
feel, I guess, somehow lulled into safety that Trump was an honest broker. But I think they've learned that lesson.
Yeah.
And I think at one point they just go, we don't care what you do. They have basically taken control of the situation. If you're in a position where you have to say, I'm not desperate, I don't even care. You're probably desperate.
Right.
Yeah.
I broke up with you.
That's
Exactly.
what I have in my Tinder bio says I'm not desperate. I just don't care.
I'm so glad I don't think about you anymore. I'm not thinking about you at all. In fact, I think about how often I don't think about you, and I'm amazed by it. Let's play this clip by J.D. Vance at that same cabinet meeting.
That's funny.
This is, I guess, more of the expression of how much they don't care, that they are literally making up fantastical reasons as to why Donald Trump launched this disastrous excursion.
When I say options, I think it's
Just an
important the American
excursion.
people know
Don't worry.
options for what. And it's options to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. You talk about people who walk into a crowded supermarket and have a vest on, and they blow up the vest, and a couple of people get killed, and that's a terrible tragedy. What happens when what's on the vest is not something that can kill a couple of people, but can kill many, many tens of thousands of people?
What are
That
you
is the
saying?
most important American national security objective that exists for any administration at any time, is you don't want the worst people in the world to have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president is doing this. That's why the president cares so much about this particular issue.
Scott Bassett.
That's what Iran's doing. They're strapping, well, first in the backpack of their terrorists, they're putting the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, and then a nuclear bomb so that they can be traveling nukes. That's how that tech works, right?
Why would you still need to do the suicide bomb if you got a nuke?
Because it's like bigotry.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're that's what they try to say. They're basically like animals. That they don't even care about their own lives or their children's lives. That's what the Israelis say about the Palestinians.
But the fantasy here, like we're in like fictional territory. You know, what if? I mean, why stop at a nuclear vest? I mean, what if they had a nuclear drone? What if they had a
vest?
What if they had a teleporter machine? What if they had a teleporter machine in Tehran and they teleported into Macy's a nuclear weapon? But here's what the answer to that is. Why wouldn't we just deploy our nuclear vest containment weapons that we have? That surely, if we're going to do that fantasy, we could have this fantasy. Post this is just it's a variation of this device that we already have.
Oops. Did not mean to do that.
You know, what if, I mean, why stop at a nuclear vest? I mean, what if they had a nuclear drone? What if they had a teleporter machine? What if they had a teleporter machine in Tehran and they teleported into Macy's a nuclear weapon? But here's what the answer to that is. Why wouldn't we just deploy our nuclear vest containment weapons that we have? That surely, if we're going to do that fantasy, we could have this fantasy. Post this is just it's a variation of this device that we already have. All we needed to do is to deploy when a terrorist with a nuclear vest has a nuclear vest. We just need to deploy this device. Here it's modeled after this vest. Do you have it? Come on. See, now we already have the technology. That is a vest that deploys when you're about to fall. All we need that to be is
1,000 hertz.
All we need that to be is a vest that contains a nuclear explosion, and then we would be safe.
Beautiful.
What if they get a death ray?
Well, if we get a death ray, then we need to come up with a special type of glasses that inhibit the death ray. But the idea that they're having to move to this, and it's just so late in the game for them to try and justify this, but it shows that like J.D. Vance is desperate to figure out some justification for this because he knows this stink is going to be on him. All right, we're gonna take a quick break,
true.
and when we come back, Hassan Piker will be joining us. We are back. Sam Cedar, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program Hassan Piker of the Hassan Piker Show. Is that what you call it?
The Hassanabi broadcast.
The Hassanabi
There you go.
broadcast. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
I feel like I'm. This is like indecent.
You're in the big chair now.
This feels strange. Also because you have a very strange thing that you sit on top of.
Yep.
But it feels good. My booty feels good.
I am remote with an image of the set behind me, and you are literally sitting in my seat. And
I mean, kind of poetic, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just
I'm not
there
worthy.
it is. A vision of the future, and also your sciatica. So that's you'll have the opportunity for that as well.
Radiant for Bledsoe.
Yes.
Let's take it easy. Why don't we say it's really more like post Brady.
Let's take it
We
easy.
could do that.
You're Brady and Hassan is Drake May. That's
let's do it that way.
The Bledsoe was better. That was better.
Football, whatever. All right. But let's talk about this because I want to talk about you recently took a trip to Cuba, which upset some people because you provided medical supplies. You one of a bunch of people actually went down there to provide medical supplies. I want to talk about that. I want to talk to you about Iran and maybe if we have time, CPAC. But I have to say, I mean, it's a coincidence you're on. We can talk about why you're in town. But you have become in some very sort of like narrow circles, like weird narrow circles. Some type of like demon force that people think will help them electorally. It's bizarre. And I mean, like they've sort of scrolled through all the ways they can attack Mamdani. They went after his wife's, social media accounts from when she was 15. They have tried it multiple times with saying like, he shook your hand. You guys are friendly. You were supportive of him during the campaign.
Yep.
But what the F is going on? Mallory McMurrow is doing it now?
Yeah. It seems like it's the centrist route. It's when a campaign is about to be Cuomo over, they just
Mallory
hit that.
McCuomo.
Yeah, they just hit that line, I think, where they'll. I mean, this was fascinating for me because I'm not super familiar with Mallory McMurrow, and I thought that she was like trying to be a Warrenite and maybe like a more moderate, more palatable centrist style progressive, right?
Yeah, like she has the energy of like the friend in a lead, the friend of a lead in a rom-com in the 2010s, right? She was trying to lean into that indie thing.
And she was actually kind of like, copying a lot of Abdul El-Sayed's policies that he's been like a champion of, from Medicare for All. She's been outspoken to a certain degree on Israel, but then there was also some inconsistencies because she went to AIPAC with a policy paper, and her staff was like, let's not allow AIPAC to get into this race, but we are kind of your person. And AIPAC's like, we're gonna get into the race. So there was a little bit of inconsistency there, but for me, this was a little bit of a shock, especially because like if you're trying to present yourself as like even remotely progressive, it's a very odd issue to polarize yourself on, to draw a line of demarcation on, where you basically are saying, I'm with Stevens, I'm with the AIPAC side on this race, where she like. The story starts with Abdul El-Sayed asking me to do a campaign rally with him, and I've never stumped with a politician running for office before. I mean, but I had collaborated with Abdul quite a bit up until this moment, as I have with many other elected representatives and politicians that are running. And I said yes. It's supposed to be me and Summer Lee and Abdul El-Sayed at Michigan State University and University of Michigan on April 7th. And when that came out on Politico, it came off the heels of this Wall Street Journal Third Way article that had come out a week prior as well, where they were like, Democrats, we need to make the tent smaller. We need to make sure that Hassan is out of the tent. Just Hassan, this one guy, he needs to get the hell out of this tent. You're
big.
Yeah,
I mean, you physically take up a decent amount of space in the tent.
So basically this happened where Jewish Insider went to virtually every single politician they possibly could go to that is like in some way, shape, or form connected to Michigan politics that is silly enough, in my opinion, to make like ridiculous statements like this. Slotkin came out and said something like, I don't really know anything about Hassan. I've never heard of him. But he's an anti-Semite, I think. And it was like such a wild thing to just admit. It's like, what the hell?
Can we read the quotes from McMorrow here? If we could just go back. This is what she said to Jewish Insider about Hassan. It is somebody who says extremely offensive things in order to generate clicks and views and followers, which is not entirely different from somebody like Nick Fuentes. Piker is a provocateur, to put it lightly, who says things that are misogynistic and anti-Semitic and that the United States deserved 9/11. You'll never outlive that commentary on imperial blowback. But I have a different theory about this. I don't think this is electorally salient. Because we say Mallory McCuomo jokingly because she ended up like the Cuomo strategy of trying to tie Mamdani to you obviously didn't work.
Yeah,
but this is, I think they see Stevens as cratering, like the Schumer pick.
Yeah.
She's cratering a bit. And so McMorrow is like, there's a pool of money here that I can access, and I'm going to audition here for these Zionist donors, and that's what she's putting out there. So she can't attack. She doesn't want to attack Abdul directly, but she's signaling like, I will be as Islamophobic as possible if necessary. I will take this money and I'll be your representative since Stevens is falling apart. So I actually don't think it's about like winning votes here. I think this is about getting some money in her coffers.
No, absolutely. This is a 90-10 issue. So anytime you step on that landmine voluntarily, you're actually foregoing a lot of people that could have potentially voted for you as like a somewhat moderate, somewhat progressive pick.
In Michigan.
Yeah, in Michigan.
In Michigan.
And this is, I said this as well, but like this is precisely the same issue that took place in Michigan that cost the Democrats the election in Michigan. You know, sending Bill Clinton out there to talk about Judea and Samaria. And then sending Richie Torres out there to like give assurances to the voters of Michigan that like the genocide will continue. These were major mistakes. And this is precisely why Michigan was lost. And it wasn't just the Arab vote either. It was a lot of people of good conscience that were very frustrated with the Democratic Party's lack of interest in addressing their demands. Now, you know, harm reduction voting in theory or in practice is I mean, in theory it's correct. In practice, it's clearly a demonstrable failure. But it doesn't matter. People don't make those calculations, right? So, like, they're going to see this once again and remember exactly why they didn't want to vote for the Democrats initially. It's going to create voter apathy, or at least it won't make voters enthusiastic about McMorrow at all.
I mean, that was the problem that we had during. I mean, I think there's a reason why they have hid that the autopsy that the DNC did, and I think, you know, at the time it was quite clear just from talking to sort of outside supportive organizations of the Democrats that they were having trouble motivating their own people, who are the people to go get the vote out, because when you depress the activists, it becomes a first, second, third order problem in terms of getting people out who are just not that involved in politics. But I do find this, like, and I think Emma's point is basically nailed it as to what value you bring in terms of a piñata. It is funny to watch. I've seen a couple of pundits jump on this. People wouldn't really know their names, but folks who've been writing about Democratic politics for a long time. I have, you know, you can find my tweets. I have a particular issue with that guy. I find him always on the wrong side of these things for literally decades. But be that as it may, it is fascinating how you have become an avatar for the narrowest group of people, and they are just adamant about, they're just talking to themselves. I mean, you know, we're in a weird era where Twitter is far less relevant than it used to be in terms of influencing the media narrative. It's still, you know, there's a story there, and there's still ways to pulling stories, although, you know, a lot of the stuff is sort of like garbage and slop these days. But it used to be that Twitter, if there was a fight on Twitter, it would shape the narrative in the mainstream media by getting into the bloodstream of a lot of writers. And that doesn't happen anymore. Like, you know, it just doesn't happen in the same way at all. It's sort of like what happens in Twitter stays in Twitter. And it's sort of like,
my theory on that is the writers, to your point, I think it builds to what you're saying, Sam. We're seeing the gutting of newsrooms across the country and billionaires capturing our media institutions. And now most people are getting their information from social media and things like that. And that's algorithmically determined. And there's also this influx of bots. Like, there was a little analysis on the Chapel Roan controversy. She left her agency, Wasserman, over the founder's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, and very publicly came out about it. Plus, she's pro-trans, pro-Palestine, all of that. This campaign against her for her security allegedly being rude to a girl in Brazil has been the top story on Twitter for about a week.
A fabricated story as well. It wasn't even her security at all. She was like completely oblivious to what had taken place.
Right, but it's the exact same thing that's happening to you. There's something that's very well financed that is artificially inflating these stories, and they're taking advantage of the fact that we do not have like a robust journalistic infrastructure anymore, and the information ecosystem, the commons of information, has been completely captured by capital.
Yeah, and they're basically faking popularity and popular narratives through these sorts of botted initiatives. In my case, it's I mean, I think I saw something similar to this in the Cuba stuff. So there is a tendency for like things that go super viral to cause like at least some editors to pay attention to and then like do coverage over. But yeah, I mean, this has been ongoing for like the past 2 weeks, where it's always the same narratives over and over again. It's the same stuff that Richie Torres even talked about in the build up to the election, where he was trying to get me deplatformed from Twitch. Well, now he's woke now. He's calling out settler terrorism, but I mean, even that in and of itself, I think is proof that like this conversation is over, right? Amongst the masses, this conversation is over. So these guys are just basically trying to create this weird pressure on politicians who are definitely a lot more tuned into media responses and a lot less tuned into what the constituents are saying or what the broad majorities of the base are saying, because they're not going to be able to stop me from appealing to the masses. My position is the position of the masses. It wasn't the case post October 7, but it is now, right? So I think they're just trying to be like, don't talk to this guy. This guy's dangerous. We can't have someone like him speak directly to politicians and have politicians associate with him. And it's far beyond just Israel as well. Israel is a major part of this, but I think it's a group. It's a collection of different interest groups, right? Most of these are very unfavorable lobbies for sectors that want to focus on making sure that the Democrats continue putting corporate profits over the interests of people, from probably healthcare to definitely like whatever mishmash of things that Third Way is supposed to represent, the interests of billionaires. And it's weird because they've singled me out as this like beacon for all of this, but I keep stressing this over and over again. Like, you take me out, let's say, right? Let's say you successfully deplatform me, or politicians don't want to come on my stream and they don't want to appeal to my audience. Fine, who cares, right? But you're not addressing the problem. if you look at the polls, Democrats are still not exactly very favorable. They're not viewed favorably, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that is exactly what I'm communicating all the time. And you know, I'm just one person. I'm a megaphone. I'm not like, I'm representative of a real mass politics in this country, as you guys are as well. And that's what's so fascinating, that these guys think like, as long as we cut off the head of the Hydra, that you know, it's over. We'll be able to deal with this, and then politicians won't actually listen to these people, and they'll listen to me instead. You know, guy who has been responsible for every electoral defeat for the last multiple decades.
It is just a fascinating moment, because I think there is a fear amongst those sort of like third way types, establishment types. You know, they're, you know, some are ideological, some are just sort of like don't care about any ideology other than maintaining their positions. And, you know, and it comes in like where, you know, there's stories about how the Republicans are so frustrated about how they can't attack Mamdani. They can't find anything.
Yeah.
And on some level, like, you are one of, like, it's almost like you're one of the branches sticking out of a cliff, and they're just grabbing at whatever they can grab. And I think it does have salience amongst, like, again, like, you know, some fundraising, some donors. But it doesn't, we have gone past the point where, well, first off, from the center to the left, there is no figures like, you know, like that have the relevance. I mean, the Nick Fuentes on one side is an obvious, like, Nazi in many respects. Maybe Nazi is not the right term. Maybe KKK, revenge, whatever it is. And I don't know that his audience is as big as the right thinks it is. But the problem is that he represents a big strand in the party. And they know that, and they can't really offend that strand. It's not the same dynamic that's happening from the center to the left, which is there's an actual, like, ideological fight. And some of it also happens to be sort of like, there's also like a fight over partisan tactics that sometimes align with that ideological fight and sometimes doesn't. On the right, the problem is they're attacking themselves. When they attack Nick Fuentes, they're attacking the basis of their electoral strength. On the center to the left, when they attack you, they're attacking a rising sentiment from the center to the left. And so it's a different dynamic. And it's not like, you know, it's fascinating how much effort they're putting into a project that is completely irrelevant for what they ostensibly want.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say irrelevant. I think it's counterproductive.
Yeah.
It's actually bad, especially because they're leaning into it. Like, their angle of attack is a 90-10 issue for the base, a 90-10 issue. So positioning yourself as being antagonistic to one of the largest anti-Zionist voices in the country, when 90% of your base is on board with this message, is so idiotic. You're not actually accomplishing anything other than the fact that you're stating your position, and you're saying,
people right here,
just like we did in 2024, right?
Can't believe
that we will win without you.
Yep.
And it's not me. There are I meet people all the time. I go to Minneapolis, I go to these protests. I meet people that are like 65 years old, right? They're lifelong liberals, and they have that exact same resentment and the exact same anger that I have for democratic fecklessness, democratic incompetence.
Yeah, he's right.
Those people didn't arrive at that conclusion because they are, you know, lifelong fans of mine. They arrived at that conclusion because they saw the Democrats lose to Trump twice, an incompetent, imbecilic fascist, twice, with the same exact method.
He's the last liberal I was going to vote for.
Pivoting to the moderate mythical center, like pivoting to the mythical center to find the mythical moderate voter. It was a failure. And this also is reflected in the communiques, right? The way that the Third Way is talking about it, the way that Mallory McMorrow is talking about it, the way that Haley Stevens is talking about it, where they say Hassan is our line in the sand, right? And what he represents is our line in the sand, which is insane. But
what the
no such criticisms exist for Gavin Newsom having Ben Shapiro on his podcast, having Charlie Kirk on his podcast, having Steve Bannon on his podcast, and then agreeing with those people, conceding to their talking points. And that, to me, demonstrates exactly the moral rot at the heart of the national politics that the Democrats represent. This is the issue. You don't have a problem with Ben Shapiro. You said you wanted to find a Joe Rogan of the left. You said, I was that guy. I never said I was that guy. I always said you can't podcast your way out of this problem, regardless, right? And yet, and I believe you wanted to pull this up.
This is from Fox News a year ago. Democratic Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow told Politico in a new interview this week that the party needs to occupy prominent cultural spaces like Joe Rogan's podcast to reach voters. She noted that snubbing these opportunities because of political differences contributes to the impression that the party is, quote, elite. Quote, instead of snubbing your nose at those people, which is the perception that a lot of people have of Democrats, is that we're elitist and we're academic and we look down on people who don't watch traditional Hollywood movies. Well, I don't know.
Oh, God.
Here. Whatever.
Well, I mean, but this also dovetails with the Graham Plattner story that we covered yesterday, where he's like leading right now Janet Mills in this Emerson poll by 20 points. And the strength is with men, also with young men. Like, I feel like I maybe hallucinated around 3 to 4 months of discourse about how the Democratic Party really needs to appeal to young men. And I see you as like an influencer, or not influencer, but an online version of that dynamic where, no, they want to win in a specific kind of way.
Yeah.
And they would actually rather lose. They would rather lose. I'm at this point now. This class of Democrats would rather lose crafting the constituency that they want than change course. And that's why there's no other option but defeating them. There's no other option but defeating them and extricating them from the party. We don't have the same goals. We do not have the same goals as the people that are attacking Hassan right now. We want to win, actually. They want to win in a very specific kind of way, and it's a less advantageous way. One, I think it's less likely to win in the short term, and two, in the long term. When we're talking about like building a political brand and a party and a constituency, like I was on the left hook with Wajahat Ali yesterday, and we were talking about I was thinking about how I had this debate about with Catherine Rampal on MSNBC about whether or not it would be better if there was a Republican in Joe Manchin's seat. And don't you want to win? Don't you want to win? First of all, it's a false choice. We could, if you ran a populist in West Virginia, I think that they would have a better shot. But two, what does this do to the long-term brand of the party with Joe Manchin representing it as a Democrat? He destroyed the expanded child tax credit, plunged millions of people back into poverty, and that happened when Biden was in power. So with his leverage as the most conservative Democrat, he watered down the agenda of the Democrats to the point that it hurt them electorally. Like, there has to be discipline about who's allowed into the party on the end of like centrism as well, because that's what drags it down.
Yeah, because whether we like it or not, people are not looking at their elected representatives as individuals. Most people, when it comes to the general election, look at the national party, and the national party is judged by its weakest members, because their weakest members, the rotating villains that they always find enough votes for to undermine populist agendas that the Biden campaign ran on, right, in 2020 and won on. That is what people look at. They don't think, oh, well, the PRO Act was about to pass, but then Mark Kelly was like not on board with it. They don't think, oh, we were going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, but like I guess the Senate parliamentarian stopped us. Like, in some ways, you don't have to be super tapped in to make this correct assessment. Of course, people are going to make this assessment, because at the end of the day, you're not delivering the goods.
You make that assessment even more so when you're not tapped in.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you don't know those internal dynamics. But here, that is why that is indicative, in my estimation, as to Schumer being both a really weak leader and also ideologically out of touch with where the people are. I mean, look, Democrats have won in special elections, in almost record numbers. And there's every reason to believe they're going to overperform in the midterms. But Democratic approval is incredibly low.
Yeah.
And it's a problem. That type of stuff catches up with you. And Schumer has, I think the fact that they did not completely cave on this DHS funding. I mean, remember, the initial ask was for reform regarding ICE, which they theoretically could have held out in this this DHS funding for. They didn't. They sort of like both sides were able to walk away from this saying that they got what they wanted on some level. And Republicans certainly took more of a beating because of the shutdown. But people forget that the reason why ICE is going to be funded, regardless of them not getting their $28 billion this year, is because they got $140 billion extra last year.
Yeah.
When Gillibrand and Schumer and basically gave space for 5 or 6 others to vote for that bill. And it was just a failure of seeing where things were going. And it hurts.
Or the Laken Riley Act.
Oh, the Laken Riley Act. I mean, on and on. All these people are running away from those votes now. And it's impressive the how poorly they can do, and how individual Democrats coming out and in certain areas can win. I guess we'll see down the road.
You know how you don't step on those landmines? Maybe sometimes you listen to a person that's outside of your orbit, outside of your immediate circle, a guy who's not in DC all the goddamn time, maybe a content creator like myself. I don't know. These are things that I was warning about at the DNC. These were things that I was warning about after Donald Trump got elected. I was very critical of a lot of Democrats who leaned into the immigration panic, and look where we're at now. It's like these polls are going to change when people realize the cruelty necessary to maintain this system of violence, to do mass deportations. People are going to react to it, and they did. And we even saw successes in places like Minneapolis, where the government had to straight up retreat. And they even collected a scalp in the process. I think that Kirsty Noem leaving the Department of Homeland Security, or getting downgraded in her position, had a lot to do with the administration's need to release a pressure valve.
Yep.
Aside from like the obvious corruption, but everybody's doing it apparently. It's all the rage.
Let's talk a little bit about Cuba. I know you got to go soon, but you tell me when you got to go. Your trip to Cuba, I want to hear about that. If we have time to talk a little bit about Iran, was this your first time to Cuba?
Yeah, I've never been to Cuba before. I mean, I've read a lot.
I find that hard to believe, but let's just pretend that.
I've gone secretly. Yeah. It was. Ben Rose, before I went out there, said that you're going to be very sad when you see like what we've done to this country, what we've done to these people, and he was right. At first, I was taken aback. I mean, I can't believe how beautiful the island is. I can't believe how beautiful the people are. They're some of the coolest, nicest, most resilient people I've ever met in my life. And then I was first, I was excited to be there. Then I was a little sad. Seeing these dilapidated buildings, it looks like a bomb exploded inside of them, and thinking about like why Cuba is the way it is, like why it's been kept so poor. And then I was angry. It was unbelievable. I mean, we experienced the rolling blackouts ourselves as well. I spent most of my time doing interviews with ordinary Cubans, doctors, neuroscientists. And I even interviewed the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cosio. And so I was outside of the Progressive International orbit, like Code Pink activities. I didn't really participate in anything that they were doing. But it was, I mean, I got to see, these blackouts in person. It was really eerie You know, we were using a generator that my friend had, a solar panel generator, like battery thing that he had, to be able to conduct our broadcast and interview people. And once we shut off the generator, if the generator runs out of power, you're like reminded, you're like, oh my God, there's no street lights. It's just pitch black darkness everywhere.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And yet the people were still persevering through it all. We saw people playing dominoes around the streets with while using their phone light. Life just kept going. And part of what I have come to understand is that
warmer levels.
The design of the American version of economic terrorism with sanctions is purposely made to be invisible, so that because the battle is ideological, so that you can make the argument that actually we're not doing anything. You could just do trade. What do you mean? It's just communism that's kept these people poor. It's very clearly designed that way. Right. It's also very clearly designed to create a class structure within this country as well. One of the things that we found out even after we came back from Cuba was that no oil had been sent to the island for the past 3 months, except for private businesses, including the hotel that we stayed at. There's only a couple hotels that you can stay at. The American government has made it illegal to stay at, the thousands of hotels that exist in Cuba for American citizens. You can go to jail for up to 10 years, and you have to pay a fine of $250,000, which is so
I think people understand this dynamic because, I had been there about 25 years ago on an OFAC license. And so it was basically,
same.
But they have changed the terms of that license to limit where you can go. So where money actually, they're doing it to try and spur some type of revolution.
They're trying to create a second, they're trying to create a capital ownership class, right? Mm-hmm. And Cuba has already reformed quite a bit in their economy, but it's still very difficult to institute full-blown systemic reforms and liberalize or marketize their economy while they're under this insane blockade, where even if you have a grain of Cuban sugar in anything that is any commodity, any food product that's created anywhere around the world, the United States of America won't purchase it. And it's the largest consumption engine on the planet. So who's going to buy Cuban sugar, right? Nobody. You've effectively shut off their industrial output by instituting these sorts of sanctions for no real reason whatsoever. And then simultaneously created a class structure within this country so that there is actually enmity and there is actually animosity by design, so that people look and they see that their roads are pitch black and there's not a lot of food, and the only industry that keeps the island alive is the only way to get foreign currency into the island is through tourism. It's the last remaining sector basically. Yep. And even then they're suffering on that front too because of the rolling blackouts. But then the Cuban population are I can't get food. Everything is so expensive. But, all these random tourists are coming in. It must be the government that's hoarding all of our resources and giving it to them. That's what it's designed to do. There hasn't been too much success so far. There hasn't really been any success at all. But it doesn't matter. It's unbelievably cruel what we're doing to these people. We're not giving oil to the island. We're not allowing other countries to legally trade with Cuba. What we are doing is illegal. It's both collective punishment and it's ridiculous. Who are we to restrict what two sovereign nations